put to the point, not too much excess. Unlike the stream, which has more legal than you could ever want or desire in one shot. How is everybody doing?
Very good.
Awesome.
Great.
Hands up.
Who talks first? We need like a priority list on this because this is wild.
Yeah, we do. By the way, I noticed something earlier. Chandler Remington. We have okay, I hear myself. This is spooky. Hold on.
And a dog.
Close
While
There we
you're
go.
figuring that out, I'm just thumbs up. Who liked the other intro better?
Okay. Well, good. Well, the other intro's a little bit longer.
Yeah, but it's good.
What I was going to say, Chandler Remington, welcome to the panel. This is your first one. And
Thank
folks,
you.
I discovered that she's at like 900 and some odd subscribers
She's my girl.
on YouTube. If you click her name in the description, you probably, I'm guessing there's enough people to take her over 1,000 today. I think that would
By
be
the
kind
show
a
of
cool-
one finger, how many videos does she have loaded right now?
Well, there's 2 videos.
Well,
So-
her introductory video doesn't count. I've been telling her that for that.
I've
Okay.
accepted
She's
that
awesome.
at this point. Yeah.
Chandler
I have-
Remington.
Chandler's my girl.
Yeah,
Why I'm not a feminist, and welcome to my channel.
yes, and the feminist is a nice video. I always love former feminists, but or current or what I don't even know how you describe that. But anyway, everybody go check it out.
Wait, I got a plug that I'm basically a
Steve
Rumble
has
guy.
a plug. What?
I'm basically a Rumble guy. I have all my
Yep.
but I'm not monetized on YouTube either. So subscribe on my YouTube channel because I need to get over 1,000 because most of I'm mainly a Rumble guy because they have like free speech.
Yeah. Steve, you have like what 600 something subscribers on YouTube, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Like you should get more YouTube
Well,
subscribers.
we
what
just
is
started
the
a
channel
week
name
ago.
so I can put it in there? I mean, that's the thing. I'm like, oh, he's a Rumble dude. So,
I forget.
Chandler, I have 2
Yes.
questions for Chandler. Do you have a Rumble channel?
I don't, but I have a Rumble login. I have not posted any content on Rumble.
You might want to do that. I'll share the YouTube now. I'm going to do it, even though I feel dirty doing it. But and now, what is your
Chandler's
first
my
video about?
co-host for Thursday night OJ Simpson's on my channel. She's
Oh,
my
there you go.
co-host.
Yeah, it's Thursday morning for me. I get up at 4:30. And that's because I love Jeff so much. I really enjoy our OJ streams. They're a lot of fun.
You heard it first here. Chandler's on Jeff.
Yeah, I'll put. I'll put my. Here's my Rumble.
make a comment in the chat.
Oh, Jeff, behave.
I got a question, Chandler. What is the thesis? What is the executive summary of why you're not a feminist?
Feminism is antiquated, myopic, and disingenuous. That's my main line. And essentially, it predicates itself on the notion that women, in order to become equal to men, that the concept of equality in feminism is, it's based on this idea that men are impervious to harm, which is false. And the Duluth model, which permeates all of domestic violence investigations, the court system, etc., it is this feminist idea, and what it does is it's incredibly destructive. It puts men at harm. Studies have shown that men and women perpetuate domestic violence equally. And so essentially, my liberal college brainwashing about how feminism was so important because the patriarchy is destroying society, I over time came to the conclusion, looking at research, looking at statistics, that men and women are being harmed equally, and we need to stop looking at things through this lens that women are these fragile creatures. Women can cause harm just as easily. And so I'm not a feminist because feminists think that men have everything, and that's not true.
Have you seen the Red Pill by chance? Cassie J's movie?
I haven't. But I have been theoretically red pilled through.
No, I'd really recommend it because that's kind of the premise of her movie. I think it's 2016 now. It's several years old, but she was going to make a movie, essentially a feminist movie. Blah 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 blah. She went out and met with the men's rights activists, including Karen. Oh God, come on, David, help me out. Karen. You had her on the show. I was on with you. I forgot her name, but anyway, the premise of it, she discovered, especially in childcare and custody and many other things, that men really have a very bad time. It changed the whole premise of the movie. Then, of course, it got her banned everywhere, haunted by journalists and kicked around in Australia. Anyway, it's called The Red Pill. Highly recommend anyone check that out.
Well, if it was banned, that's when you know you have to see it, right?
I've got 2 follow-up questions for Chandler. First is Chandler Remington your real name?
Chandler
You do not have to answer that.
Chandler is my real first name. Remington is not.
Okay, I was
but-
gonna say it's the baddest ass name on the planet.
Thank you.
It is.
Now,
We just keep saying she's like the smoky female detective with the fedora and the overcoat, sitting in a smoky, darkened private detective's office somewhere in the 1930s, going, "I'm Chandler Remington."
How about the show Remington Steele? Any influence there?
I have heard of Remington Steele, and I mean, Remington was my
So
cat's
young.
name, and so Remington was my
I've
cat's
heard of
name.
this
It's in
thing
honor of
called
my
The
cat.
Simpsons.
Okay, well, look,
But I love,
there's a reason
people
why I
tend to
said
really
that.
like the name.
Okay,
The
now hold
reason
on.
why I said it is the premise of the show was she needed to have a male figure for her female-run private investigation firm, so she came up with the fake name of Remington Steele and then hired an actor to play it. So that's why I asked. It could be a kind of influence, but go ahead,
Yeah.
David.
Second follow-up question. I've heard the statistic about domestic abuse, being equal of men to women. Is it a situation of like all dogs bite? And I'm not saying this to be funny. Like dogs bite, but when a pit bull bites, it makes the news, whereas when a chihuahua bites, it doesn't. And so female on male spousal abuse is a slap or a shove, but male on female spousal abuse is worse. Therefore, makes statistics more.
No,
No.
not necessarily at all. The figures that are represented show that women are actually slightly more violent in relationships than men are. But the problem is that we have this thing called the Duluth model that came out in 1986. It was created by this feminist named Ellen Pence, and it was like this small group of people who weren't even therapists, and they came to this conclusion that essentially all domestic violence, all women are victims, all men are perpetrators. Men want to perpetuate violence against women because they have the patriarchy in them and they are born oppressors. And there's this intervention model that they have that completely fails to prevent any domestic violence. It's this treatment program that pretty much, shows men that like they're bad, they're the problem. It doesn't really get to the heart of why people are abusive, and abuse comes from personality challenges, attachment issues, things about like anxious attachment kind of partnerships, like we saw in the, in the Depp Heard thing. It's just really not about gender. But the problem is that you have this model that it's this interagency model where you have the court system using it, you have police using it, and they're teaching all of these police, like when you go, if a woman makes an allegation, she's probably in harm's way. A lot of the time women will weaponize the police against their partners. They're the aggressor. They're the ones who are, hitting first. A man hits back, he's screwed. He's totally screwed. He can't say he was acting in self-defense. But it's this concept that women are frail and that the patriarchy is to blame. That's the problem. And we need to start dismantling that, because the statistics show that when you ask about that, like, is it equal? Is it just that like we're hearing about it differently? The problem is that I think it's the statistic that with domestic violence, that more women are killed in domestic violence situations than men are, but men tend to commit suicide more often as a result of domestic violence. And you don't really see those statistics as being attached as those relationships, those women causing that problem.
Interesting.
So I hope that answers your question.
That was just woman
Statistical
splaining.
modeling.
I rejected all that. Was woman splaining.
The statistical modeling and categorical assumptions with regard to domestic violence is one of the most dangerous things you can do. It's every case is so unique and every interpersonal relationship is so unique. The fact that we try to take this global approach and apply it downward, whether it doesn't matter which gender you're applying it to, the fact that you do that with something that's so dynamic as far as interpersonal relationships is really just, it's a fundamental flaw in how we've treated this area of law.
Actually, and Jeff and I had talked about this earlier about the Prairie Fire Manifesto, which was a Marxist attack on American society, taking Marxism and taking the proletariat bourgeoisie dynamic and turning it into oppressor model and applying that into race and sex as a way to destroy this country. And so that has been implemented. And so what you're seeing is the Marxists are attempting to destroy the country by dividing us by sex and race. and using that
Absolutely.
as the attack to undermine the society. So that is a very Marxist kind of approach, but taken into a modern duality of oppressed oppressor, which, you know, we're all oppressed and oppressors in some schema within the intersectional pyramid. But
And some people are both as well.
some people
Like,
are, we're all both, so we're all vulnerable. But that's the model that you're talking about, Chandler. It's, you know, from a top down view, it's really kind of a Marxist division.
absolutely. And the problem with that is that you have what's being taught. Like, okay, so I went to UCLA. I was definitely brainwashed in a liberal fashion. I was basically taught all of these Marxist ideologies, and really, they really hammered home the whole Marxism thing. I mean, I was an anthropology major, but, you know, that still came in. And essentially, you're put in this position where you're being taught that, you know, there are these categories of people that are systemically oppressed, and there is systemic oppression, certainly, but the problem is that there's also systemic weaponization of being in a victim category, where a woman can use her femininity to make herself look like a victim when she is the aggressor. And that is the problem with the Duluth model. It's the problem, you know, with positioning this whole thing as in, you know, these kinds of people are oppressed and these kinds of people are the oppressors just based on their sex or their gender. I don't really believe it works like that. It's far too complex and nuanced. But people do sort of weaponize that, take advantage of that, and it creates a systemic problem where there actually is female privilege that we don't talk about. And there's female toxic, like when you talk about like toxic masculinity, there's toxic femininity that we don't talk about.
In a criminal context, you know, when I do criminal defense, and, you know, there's a huge female privilege in criminal sentencing.
Yes. A huge disparity between, you know, like women get lesser sentences for crimes that men commit, correct?
Right. And but, you know, maybe that's fair, maybe it's not. But to say that there is privilege only runs one way is false. I mean, there's privileges of each. I mean, we're different. Men and women are different, but it's like we can't even acknowledge that because it's not politically correct. And the differences, but then there's also used to destroy the society by dividing men from women. Everybody has a mother. People have sisters and daughters. So, you know, we should bring people together. Women and men complement each other. But this division is, you know, very toxic for our society.
Steve, now might be a good time. I received your books in the mail. Prepare for Individual Freedom, people. And the other one, Ideas and Answers in Law. Steve, where can people purchase
That's
these
in the
books?
other room.
Man, I love you, buddy.
Everybody hold on. Everybody hold it up. You just have a panel.
Hold on one second.
Viva, you do not need to help Steve grift. He'll figure it out.
That's what I was going to say. Who had 12
It's not a
minutes and
grift when you're
38
adding value.
seconds?
Yes, it's at stevegosney.com. It's at stevegosney.com. It's the only place. It's not available in Amazon or Barnes & Noble or nowhere, only from me directly. And it's very important. And I'm hoping if Mr. Viva would honor me at some point in the next few weeks where I'm still available, because I have a death penalty case coming in. When that comes in, my life is over for at least 3 months, that we can talk about it more in depth. But I do have a series of books. I also have a new book that is also available for pre-order called Death Penalty Debates, which is, and Chandler Remington is actually helping me edit it. And
Yes,
that will be available within the next month. But pre-orders are available. So all of my books and all of my stuff is at stevegosney.com. Thank you very much. You're awesome.
I just finished 3 hours with Steve Gosney. You had no idea how difficult it was to prevent him from grifting every 30 seconds on the stream.
Well,
You did a
wasn't
pretty
he
good job.
exposed by Nick
That was
Ricada?
great.
I thought that Nick introduced him. So,
Well,
I mean,
Nick-
come on.
Nick did the intro to Prepare,
Exactly.
and Andrew
Speaking of
Branca.
Nick,
Andrew Branca is the forward to this one.
Oh, Steve,
did
can
you
I
guys
ask, is
see
somebody
Akira
doing
the
forward?
Don?
What's that?
I was
Did
just
you
going to ask
see-
if somebody. Oh, wait.
All right, go ahead.
Is
Chandler?
somebody doing the forward? Is somebody doing the forward to Death Penalty
Yes.
Debates?
Yes, and it's
Okay.
amazing. He is, I guess I can out him but a little bit. Hopefully I haven't gotten it for sure, but he is the chaplain for the Florida State Death Row for the last
Oh.
25 years and
Wow.
was honored by the Pope for a life-giving award. So he is a
Very
brilliant man.
Who's this?
man.
He's going to write the forward to my my book, Death Penalty Debates, which is available at pre-order at stevegosney.com.
Did I not?
Now let me help Runkle. Sorry, over here. Runkle, I heard the news out of Canada now. They've formally passed legislation to outlaw handguns.
No, it's currently at the Senate, but it's going to be passed because the Senate is pretty much useless. And we have the Independent Senators Group, which is complete BS because the Independent Senators Group is the Liberal Senators Group. They say the Independent Senators Group, but they like go to liberal campaign events and so forth. So, yeah, it's going to get rubber stamped. It's a terrible piece of legislation. It's absolutely nuts. It's going to promote swatting. It's they can take your guns away if they have suspicion that you may have been involved in domestic violence, which includes like financial abuse. So, like the standard is so vague.
And this applies to both. I mean, I guess it applies to non-restricted firearms, long arms.
Well, what it is they've banned the transfer of any, or they're banning the transfer of any handguns. So if you don't have a handgun now, you'll never get one. And they've removed the list of guns they want to ban, but they've basically said that they're planning on reintroducing that list. So we're going to see a whole bunch of bans coming down the pipe for all sorts of things, including most likely
the transfer thing.
Yeah.
What if it's inherited? Are they
That's a
banning
transfer?
Seriously. So if someone dies owning a handgun, that handgun goes where under this new law?
To the state.
Chop saw. Trash can. It's so yeah.
Okay, to start on the actual legal subjects, I'm going to have Steve from Southern Law kick us off, but otherwise he'll never talk the entire stream. So from my understanding, you read the Tiger Woods.
Yeah, this maybe goes a little bit to what Chandler was talking about in terms of this whole Me Too and pendulum swinging, and she didn't say Me Too, but just in terms of the feminism thing. So anyway, when I saw the the news about it, my impression of the suit was his girlfriend had sued him for a bunch of money because they broke up and she thinks she's entitled to his money. That was my idea about it from the media. And of course, she can't do that because she's under this harsh non-disclosure agreement. And so it's just the patriarchy holding women down again. That's the impression I had from the media. But I went and looked up the order, and it was, like a lot of these things, it's not at all what you think it's going to be. So her original lawsuit, or her actual pending lawsuit, is not against Tiger Woods. It's against the Jupiter Island Irrevocable Homestead Trust. So she's suing the trust that I guess it owns the house that he lives in.
Oh yeah,
and her lawsuit is her lawsuit is asking for $30 million or more or less. Because that's what she says it's worth for her to have lived there for an additional 5 years that she says she was entitled to do based on an oral tenancy. So no written agreement, that she would provide valuable services. She would be entitled to stay in this house for 5 more years. And now she's going to miss out on $30 million of glory of living in this home. So the trust made a motion to dismiss basically on the idea that that's ridiculous and not enforceable. But then it filed a motion saying this is really about her being butthurt about him breaking up with her. And there's an arbitration agreement between Woods and her. And so this needs to go to arbitration. She then filed a declaratory judgment action against Tiger Woods. So now we finally have a lawsuit against Tiger Woods. It wasn't asking for money. It was asking the court to say that this arbitration agreement and associated non-disclosure agreement are invalid. And she made several arguments, but the two that were pertaining to this topic are related to new federal laws. And one is, you can't have somebody who is making a claim of sexual harassment or assault be forced to arbitrate. And you can't have a pre-dispute non-disclosure be enforceable against somebody for those claims. But she didn't make those claims. She made a claim that she was out of this tenancy, that she didn't have the glory of staying in this house. So the judge basically said, look, you didn't put in your lawsuit any claims of harassment or assault. You haven't made those here. You just made some vague references to it in your briefing. It doesn't come under this statute. You signed the agreement and the arbitration agreement stands. So I haven't seen that in the primary case be forced to arbitration yet. But the whole thing about, which I don't hold it against her lawyers trying to find some hook to void this arbitration agreement, because they kind of suck if you're the plaintiff a lot of times. And I respect that. But my view is, be an aggressive lawyer. However, in this case, it's just crap. And if the media spins it that Woods was harassing and assaulting her and she can't tell her poor story or whatever, that is not even what her case was about, which to me is the ridiculous assumption that she had a 5-year right to live as a tenant in his house. That's a long, short summary of the case.
Well, this started, and Steve, you're right on all the facts. This started though with TMZ breaking a story, and TMZ broke the story I think last month, and they basically said that this lawsuit was being filed to set aside this non-disclosure agreement because references to domestic violence. Because references, it just cited the statute. Well, TMZ ran that story. They didn't do any other checks within Florida's, that system is online. You can look at all the filings. They did 0 other background checks, nothing. They didn't look for anything else. They ran the story. Every other media publication picked up on the story and copied and pasted it into their own stuff, to the point where you had ESPN basically running with this as the headline. It took me 2 minutes to log in to find out that there was a previous lawsuit against the estate. And just all of a sudden, like one tweet out, a couple other retweets, and you start seeing the headlines start to change around 2:00 in the afternoon. All of these little subtle retractions and ghost edits that never were made, because there was a heck of a lot more to the story than they wanted to originally report. TMZ does this time and again, and all of the other publications just piggyback it and shoot it out there. This was a junk lawsuit to begin with. It was junk from the beginning all the way to the end, and thank God it's being pushed to arbitration. I mean, she was saying in the hearing, apparently she said, I don't remember signing this agreement, and they literally show her the agreement with her signature. They show emails that say, like, I remember this agreement. She knew what she was doing.
Oh yeah. That's bordering on frivolous. That I'm not sure if I don't remember signing that, but I can't contest it. I mean, she signed it. There was emails back and forth, declarations, and all that stuff. So that didn't go very far, of course. Yeah.
Not having a memory of signing something is not a legal defense.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I use it often at home. I forgot to buy that at the store.
Well, that's your wife defense.
Yes,
not necessarily your court defense.
No.
I would think.
It works there too.
All right, on a heavier topic then, I'm going to go to Jeff.
Okay.
From what I understand, there was a sentencing this week with Zachariah Anderson. Do you want to tell us about what the actual case is, some of your problems with it, and what went down?
Well, we can do that, and I would point out that Zachariah Anderson's brother Solomon is here in our chat as we speak.
Is he? Okay.
He's gonna be joining me. He's gonna be joining me on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, really? He's joining me on Monday.
Zachariah Anderson was. I mean, and I've been straight up with the Anderson family from day one of me covering the trial, that I don't know whether he did it or not. I don't care whether he did or not. It's the process.
Mm-hmm.
He was found guilty of 2 counts of stalking, 1 count of essentially first-degree murder, and one count of hiding a corpse. There is no body, no murder weapon, no defendant's DNA anywhere at, on, or near the murder scene. The victim's DNA was not conclusively found anywhere on anything belonging to the defendant. The deceased DNA was not found anywhere other than a tiny speck a pinpoint that was so small they couldn't test it for both blood and DNA in the back of an SUV. And conclusively, they could only say it was a single source male DNA, that they could not exclude the victim as the contributor of that DNA. It was the trial was overseen by Judge Schrader of the Rittenhouse trial. The DA himself, who is Binger's boss, Gravely, who is, I believe, is an absolute scumbag of a prosecutor, was handling the prosecution. They had the single most, I guess the largest piece of evidence they had against him was a jailhouse snitch named Munch, who, it wasn't just your standard, we were sitting around one day and he told me this. The jailhouse confession consisted of him saying the defendant was screaming in his sleep, die, 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 mother effer. In his sleep. He confessed in his sleep. And then he said he woke up, and I looked at him and I said, I think you did this. Tell me you didn't do it. And he jumped out of his rack and he looked me right in the eye and said, I did it. That was literally this guy's testimony for the jailhouse confession. One of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. He was found guilty and just sentenced a few days ago to consecutive terms of 2 years for each of the stalking, 6 years for hiding a corpse, and life for the murder. So he's essentially eligible for parole in 50 years from now. Absolute, regardless, again, as I say, whether you think he did it or not is irrelevant to the purpose and the process of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Absolutely the worst miscarriage of justice I have personally ever seen, with the utter lack of evidence that was presented in that trial.
I was just reading an article where they haven't found the body. They've concluded that the murder was the individual was killed in an apartment with blunt force with a sharp edge.
He is still officially legally listed as missing.
Well, but how do they determine the weapon if they don't have any other?
Well, that's an
forensics?
interesting thing. They first said that it was blunt force trauma indicative of a baseball bat because he was a AAA baseball coach, the alleged victim. And they found baseballs, mitts, and other baseball paraphernalia, but no baseball bats at the scene. So the prosecutor's original theory was he was beat to death with a baseball bat. But then this jailhouse snitch I was talking about said that the confession involved a stabbing. So from that witness's from the instant he gave that testimony, the prosecution switched their theory from blunt force trauma to literally, and they made this a point in the closing arguments, that he beat him with a baseball bat and then at some point switched to a sharp bladed weapon to finish the job.
But did they not find a crime scene and blood?
Nope.
Oh, Viva, it's worse. The prosecutor was allowed to introduce evidence that I swear I could not believe I was hearing it, because it was one of those days I tuned in to Jeff when he was covering it. And it was the testimony about going to the barn or going to the field where they had the barn. And the prosecutor's going, well, there were chainsaws in that barn, right?
And they run a tree farm.
Yeah, they introduced evidence of a chainsaw existing. Now, anyone who's thinking about this, you know exactly what they're implying. But if a chainsaw is used in any fashion of this, there is blood everywhere, and you're not getting it out of there.
And they tested the hell out of this guy's house. No, luminol all over the place. Nothing in the drains. Nothing in the vehicles. Nothing anywhere around anything to do with this house. No positive test for blood anywhere. And and as Rob was saying,
you don't get that even with a bat.
But hold on,
a tree farm, and they say, "Oh, there's a chainsaw at a tree farm."
But one article says that there was blood in Gutierrez's apartment.
Yes.
I presume
it was Gutierrez's blood in Gutierrez's apartment.
Okay.
They also
weirdly they found Gutierrez's blood in Gutierrez's house,
but not in the vehicle.
Yeah, and the defendant's DNA on the defendant's clothes.
Right. They also allowed his daughter to testify that he was a marijuana plant grower.
Oh,
which was
hell's sakes. You were
which was just I was there. I joined him I joined him for that day. His daughter on the stand was testifying, and the justification was to prove that she had been in the house. Yeah. She has to describe it, and she has to basically say that there was dozens of marijuana plants there.
Yeah. It wasn't dozens. They brought her in to testify to her knowledge and memory of the house, like Joe said. They could have asked her what color are the walls in the living room, what color is the carpet. No, they asked her about the marijuana growing operation.
Right.
And this young girl testifies there were exactly 72 marijuana plants. She testified about the drying room. She testified about the cutting room. And then they showed her a picture of a plastic baggie full of weed and said, "What is that?" And she looked at the bag of weed and said, "Can you tell me what that is?"
What is that? I don't know what that is.
I got a question here. I mean, some of the evidence. Security from a Walmart shows Anderson purchasing gloves, trash bags, and wipes
10 hours after the murder.
Setting aside that it doesn't exactly make sense with covering up the act itself, was the argument that was for marijuana growing that he was engaged in as well?
The argument is his job was the demolition of construction sites.
There was also there was also that gun that she testified about. That she was like, when she's on
Oh,
cross
yeah,
examination. This was like a crazy, terribly awful moment, which should have been a mistrial right then and there. It was, he's asking about the gun that he supposedly owned, and when she's asked about it, and she doesn't know what color it is, whatever. She's like all confused about it, and finally she blurts out, she's like, "I know that's," and whether that gun had ever even been in the state. Like there was a question, like it was a gun that had been in California, whether it had ever actually been in the state of Wisconsin.
Well,
and she said, she blurts out, "I know that gun. I was threatened with that gun," and everyone's like,
yeah. And now the thing is that the defense was going to bring on the police officer, one of the lead investigators of the scene, during their rebuttal case to testify about this firearm, but miraculously, his daughter had an out-of-state volleyball game he had to go to. So he wasn't available, and he gave a stipulation. They stipulated that he would have testified that gun was never in the state of Wisconsin. And the jury doesn't listen to stipulations. They never do.
The curative jury instruction is going to solve all of that. It's going to make the impression, and the jury's going to go, oh, wait, maybe we should reconsider this. I mean, come on. No.
People in the chat are saying he's also buying gloves and wipes at the beginning of COVID, which is also a damn good explanation.
Yeah, it was the beginning of COVID, and the prosecution was saying it was bleach. It was Clorox wipes.
Yeah,
who wasn't buying Clorox wipes in 2000?
Oh my! They were handing them out for free when you went into any place, they'd give you a wipe. May I ask? Not that it matters, but I'm asking. Had he had any criminal record, any violent convictions prior to this?
I don't think violent offenses.
Like marijuana, like over there was one conviction for over 10 pounds of marijuana
in South Dakota.
And the body,
and other things when he was a juvenile.
And the body that he removed weighs 200 pounds.
270 pounds.
270 pounds.
He has a documented history of back problems, consistently going to a chiropractor. He was supposed to have moved this guy out in a carpet that he wrapped the guy up in, the area rug. Somehow got it out into the hallway, into his van, without getting blood anywhere on the outside, anywhere else, and then left the body in the back seat, went to Walmart and purchased all of those items to dispose of the body. And that he had parked very far away from the cameras on purpose in order to conceal the fact that he was in a Walmart parking lot with a body in the back of his truck, which, by the way, the truck was filthy, and they claimed that there was a bleach smell in the truck, but it was very, very, very dirty, and they found one speck of what could have been the victim's DNA. Well,
and one thing that Solomon just pointed out here, which was kind of one of my favorite, quote unquote, favorite parts of the trial, this was a retrial. The trial, there had been a mistrial in the first case a year ago because the prosecution failed to turn over evidence to the defense that one of the witnesses wasn't where she testified to being during the first trial. And then when we get into this, when they were talking about this, when they were going over this, District Attorney Gravely had said that he went with this witness to the location where she said she was at the time. And that's when he learned she wasn't in the right situation, in the right location, which meant that now the district attorney has inserted him into the case as a material witness. And they moved for him to be excluded from the trial. And Judge Schrader did not, he just kicked him out of the courtroom for that one person's testimony, rather than kicking him off the case for the entire and people are asking me why I'm getting so involved in this, because in my entire life, in 28 years of legal work, I have never seen a case this bad.
Well, can I ask, I'm going to put a little context on this and a little overview, because from a criminal defense perspective, and the thing is that we can get so wrapped up in the details. And if people are hearing these details for the first time, their eyes are going to glaze over, and they're going to go, there was a gun, there was a stabbing, there's a thing, and they don't really understand what the issues are involved. There is a legal standard called the circumstantial evidence rule that is designed to protect against wrongful prosecutions, and that is that if there's a reasonable hypothesis of innocence, then the judgment of acquittal must be granted. That means if there is a reasonable explanation for circumstantial evidence, this is a completely circumstantial evidence case, then if there is some theory by which these things are explained by innocent behavior, you must grant an acquittal. The problem is that people get overwhelmed by all these details and they think, oh my God. But that is the rule that is being gradually eroded over time. In Florida, we no longer have the circumstantial evidence rule based on a case called Bush out of Florida. So we are backing off from protections for people who are actually innocent and then getting more and more empowering of the prosecutors. And that's what you're seeing in this case is circumstantial evidence convicting somebody who has a reasonable hypothesis of innocence.
Well, and Steve, I mean, the thing that drove me up the wall, and it should have just been the end of the case right there, was during closing arguments, the prosecution repeatedly said, well, maybe this was very well planned out. Maybe he went and did this. Maybe he did that. He said maybe at least a dozen times.
Well, and
for me,
maybe this was well planned out. That never happens to this degree.
That might be it, Ian, but the evidentiary rulings, if you saw some of these rulings, you would flip your lid.
What's the deal? Because it's Judge Schrader from Rittenhouse, who everybody, his the world's favorite judge. I don't
Not
know
anymore.
And that's the thing, is apparently he's
Not
had
ever.
a massive head injury between Rittenhouse and today. He apparently had a major head injury that took him off the bench for a long time. And
He
now
wasn't
this is
great
his
in
life.
Rittenhouse. He was terrible in Rittenhouse.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
That I mean,
He was
yeah.
awful. I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't know. Everyone, because Rittenhouse was found not guilty, everyone had waxes sentimental about Schrader yelling at Binger, saying,
Yeah.
"Don't get brazen with me." The fact of the matter is, in Rittenhouse, I mean,
he never
allowing
did anything with with
The-
Binger.
the purpose
And
of
he
a
never,
judge. Yeah, he never did anything to Binger.
And he punted on that motion
Yeah.
to dismiss in Rittenhouse, which
But that's
worked
what
out
he-
because Rittenhouse was acquitted, but he ought to have granted it.
And,
Oh, see, that's
so-
what he did during this entire trial. He said, okay, this is a legitimate issue, but it's not ripe right now. We'll just wait until it becomes a problem and then I'll deal with it. Hoping it never became a problem so he didn't have to do anything.
Did
But
you
one of the
guys
things
forget, Jeff, did you
people are-
forget
yeah.
hocus pocus out of focus? Did you
Yeah.
why did he have to say that? Because
Well-
Schrader allowed in ridiculous photographs, which no one can tell what they were, in order to support some sort of new convoluted theory that he raised the gun and that's what inspired the guy to shoot those to fire to charge at him or whatever it was. It was this whole ridiculous thing which no one could tell what was in that photograph, who was in the photograph, anything about the photograph. And he's like, I'll allow it. So,
Well,
and the whole
yeah, right.
purpose of a judge is to be a gatekeeper so that the jury
Right.
does not get confused by evidence that is impossible to actually really deduce anything,
to have the
affirmative
guts,
from.
to have the testicular fortitude to actually make legal decisions.
And he didn't in Rittenhouse, which is
Well,
why
but
I didn't like him in Rittenhouse either.
I will
Joe,
formally retract and correct. I have been convinced, ladies and ladies
Well,
and
Jo-
men
Joe,
of the jury.
Were
Well, I have
you
to
there,
say-
Joe, when the you were there when the prison house snitch was giving his testimony, right?
No, I
You were-
missed that one.
But you weren't there. But anyway, Chandler was there, I believe. But yeah, Munch.
Oh, I
his
was there
nickname
for all
was
of it.
Munch. During this die mother effer dream sequence, like the camera, when the prison house snitch was giving his testimony, the camera focused on the defense attorney and
The prosecution. You're talking about
Simultaneous.
Gravely.
Yeah, Gravely, the prosecutor, sorry, was focused on the prosecution, on the prosecutor, on the district attorney himself, simultaneously with prison snitch Munch saying that in his sleep he shouted, die, mother effer. The camera was focused on the district attorney and he was simultaneously mouthing while he was giving testimony.
It became an issue. They brought it up and they had to argue
Yeah.
it. And Binger was reviewing footage.
And he did that twice.
Yeah,
He did that with another witness as well.
Schrader.
he did.
He was clearly coaching him. It was just like the offstage cue card reader going, this is your
Why don't you
next
hold up a
line."
sign? Hold up a sign
Yeah.
for what he should read.
Well, and Munch had that whole Houdini moment too, where he said,
Oh, yeah.
that the defendant had a prison nickname, and his nickname was Houdini, and everybody called him Houdini because he knew how to make a body disappear.
Yeah, he made
And,
the body disappear.
And he had this line where he said that Zachariah Anderson said, "No body, no crime."
Yeah, no body, no crime. And then
It
they
was all
called him
very Law and
Superman.
Order.
Yeah, when
Uh-huh.
they asked him how this this relatively small guy got the 270-pound, that's when he got the nickname Superman, because he carried the body out all the
It's not even 270 with the rug wrapped around it. It's got to be at
Yeah.
least 300 pounds.
I mean, it was.
And this is a small guy.
I've
He's a
never
small
seen
guy.
this. I've never, ever seen a trial with this much lack of evidence.
You
I
forgot
don't
the
even know how it
girlfriend
got to
showing
trial.
up at the house.
Well,
Didn't
yeah,
the girlfriend show up at the house?
Yep. The girlfriend was the one that she hadn't heard. Her new boyfriend, she'd been dating the guy for like 2 months. They'd gone out a few times. She hadn't heard from him in 12 hours. So she freaked out and ran to his house. And she was the one that discovered the crime scene. The police showed up, and the first thing she says is, "I think my ex-boyfriend may have done it."
No, she said, I
That'll be
just
enough for me to
know
convict her.
that Zachariah
Mhm.
Anderson had something
Same.
to do with this.
Yeah.
Hunley, I flipped you the link. I think it's the part where the prison snitch is testifying. It's in the first 30 seconds.
It's so bad.
That
It's really-
was awful.
Have a look at that. I don't know how we're all gonna disappear into mini. That's out. Okay. No, wrong article. Oh,
Well,
you're also on mute, Eric.
There should be checks on this, and it should be through the circumstantial evidence rule,
That's
as well
co-host
as
Rob.
there's
Me
also a
crazy.
lot of appellate issues in evidentiary issues. I didn't follow. I was working actually.
Yeah.
So, but I know that everybody that's followed it is outraged, and
Well,
there's,
I mean,
there's a site on this. Isn't there like a site? Go ahead.
Let's see this.
This is Munch here. Yeah.
You were observing the defendant when.
Okay, time out for a second, Eric. Can you pause this for just a second? Munch was the second person. They went to another potential prison snitch, who said, "No, I ain't going to do this," and he was a witness for the defense. Then this Munch is the second guy they went to here, and he was. I can't remember exactly what he was in prison for, but he was in prison on federal charges for massive amounts of tens of kilograms of marijuana and cocaine and other drugs.
Crack cocaine.
Yeah.
Do they get to ask, or did they ask the snitch if he was granted any clemency or reduction or benefit for testifying?
Yeah, and they said, well, because they know the rule. They said no, nothing was specifically promised, but he asked for leniency, kind of.
Well, that's okay. All right. Well,
Yeah, so-
In addition, there was another inmate who, we can talk about that after.
Yeah.
okay, let's do this.
was having a nightmare.
He was having a
Yes.
nightmare.
And what do you remember about that incident?
I remember I was laying there the night before. I told him about it the next day, but I was laying there and I was reading my book, and I heard him shout in his sleep before he woke himself up.
And what did he shout that you heard?
He said, "Die,
Watch this.
die, die, motherfucker."
You're quoting as best you remember?
Yes.
All right. And so did you ever have a discussion with the defendant about this nightmare that you heard him have, or these words he said?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so if you know, about how long after that happened did you bring it up to him?
I brought it up to him the next day.
Okay. And what did you say to him about it?
I pretty much told him, I asked him about the situation about that he was locked up about, and I told him that he was talking in his sleep or yelling about some stuff in his sleep, and he was like, "What did I say?" And I pretty much told him what he said, and he's like, "Yeah, you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you said it." So I asked him a question. I'm like, "Did you do it?" Like, what? You know what I'm saying? I think you did it. And we went from there.
And so what did the defendant respond when you said, "I think you did it," based on the nightmare?
Look
What
at
did
this.
he say?
I told him to look me in my eyes and tell me that you didn't do it.
Why?
He jumped down from
That-
the
that's what-
bed.
why
and
would
he
he be
looked me in my eyes and he said, "I did it."
This is the biggest load of shit. Eric,
This
you
is
should-
crazy.
you should get the behavior panel on this, because
Yeah, that's right.
if I'm
Oh,
calling
you're
it,
telling us.
that guy's a liar. I mean,
Yeah, no kidding. It's so
Yeah.
obvious.
Really? Yeah. That guy's a big
It's
time
the
liar.
dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. That's the dumbest
I
jailhouse.
mean, it's not
confession
even he
ever.
told me; it's he yelled in his sleep.
No, but
How
I
is this
made-
admissible?
The look me in my eye and tell me that gets said in any prison period and ever between inmates.
But they'd only
No.
been he hasn't said a word to anybody for 3 years, and now suddenly he's going to tell this guy in his cell he's known for 3 weeks that I did it.
I did
5
it,
weeks, but
man.
yeah.
He was in jail for how long up until the trial? The entire time?
About 3 years.
Mhm.
Jesus.
It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
and then there was one thing when he said, I mean, you can't unring the bell, but Judge Schrader said to disregard it when he said, "Yeah, I've seen killers, and he looked like a killer to me." That's what Munch said. I mean, oh my god!
Wow,
it was
that's
bad.
terrible.
Oh, we talked about this. This was discussed. It was painful listening to the daughter talk.
Yeah.
It was sad.
Mark Randazzo? I wouldn't call him the
Oh,
most corrupt lawyer.
That's Nick's lawyer, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. Supposedly he really is one of the best in the country.
Yeah, well, people, this is a point that we talked a little bit about. Family was not allowed to talk at sentencing. So Zachariah's family, people would be
Which is
shocked.
weird.
In my death penalty book, it's available at SteveGosney.com for pre-order. People won't believe that we had a case which the family
Steve, you wrote a book?
I
This
wrote
is the first time ever hearing about this.
I know it's shocking.
Here we go.
But I actually wrote a book. It's called Death Penalty Debates, available at SteveGosney.com. And in it, we had a trial. We had a case where the family of the murder victim begged to whoops, what happened?
No, nothing. We were allowing you. You were doing your introductional portion of the stream. So we were
Okay. Well, no. We had a case where the death penalty was in play, and the family of the victim it was a father killing an infant son, begged the state attorney's office not to impose the death penalty, not to seek the death penalty. Unanimously, the prosecutor ignored the family, went for the death penalty, got a conviction, asked for the death penalty to the jury. The family was not allowed to speak to the jury about their will, unanimously wanting him to get life, and the prosecutor went for death anyway. The jury came back with life, and the family all thanked our defense team for fighting for that, but the family was silenced and not allowed to speak as to their will to the jury when they wanted life.
When I maintain there's a Sixth Amendment argument to be made that the convicted person has a constitutional right to have people speak on his behalf, because until that minute that the court passes sentence, it is still a question and controversy.
Well, and he didn't get to have anybody.
Anderson shirt on, but
he got to have 0 people speak for him, right? I mean, they wanted
himself
and
his lawyer, that's it.
and his
And
lawyer.
Daryl Brooks in the state of Wisconsin, he had his mother speak on his behalf, and that man murdered how many people? Considering the difference in his cases, and I mean, I feel very strong, and it's in the state of Wisconsin as well. And I understand
same state, just different rules because different courtrooms.
Schrader just
That's wrong.
made this decision. He was like, "Well, I've never done it this way.
Out
I
of
don't know why
control
you would
co-host.
expect me to do it this way." And
It's people in the chat are asking, how have we never heard of this case? It's actually kind of stunning. How long did the trial last?
15 days. Jeez. It was a 15-day trial. Go to Legal Vices and check it out. I stream like Ozzy Overlord, and I streamed every morning, and Ozzy Overlord streamed the afternoon.
Now, Vices, stop grifting.
By the way, we've got Steve Gosney's channel here. He got it fixed while we're in the grifting. Look at his subscriber count, folks. Six.
Stop grifting, Steve.
6. The number of the beast.
I'm sure folks can get it up from there. We don't want him to be suffering evil. That would be very tragic.
Set aside the grifting. I'm going to do the selling. If everybody needs thumbnails, you get what did I say, Eric? It's 10 for 300 Canadian if you use DSLR Dave. He's the guy that does my thumbnails, and they're beautiful. And you know the difference when he does them; they're beautiful. When I do them, they're dog poops.
Oh, I know when David does them because I get videos. I'm like, David, did you do the thumbnail today?
Oh yeah, that's if it's not the default. When I do a thumbnail, it's like I'm using whatever that app is, and it's garbage.
Well,
DSLR
it's funny
Dave.
because he doesn't know how to remove the background. So the way I could tell is he kind of does this like cutout. As if Ethan had cut a picture out and stuck it on a kidnapping notice.
At best, I use Pick Collage, and then I do the cutouts. Then I go to Pick Monkey, and I do the crap. It's garbage. DSLR Dave, thumbnail guy. If anybody needs them,
Canva.com does a good job.
Wait a second. What do you use to cut yourself out?
It's garbage. It's a garbage. Well, I would say it's a garbage.
Just
app.
to remove remove BG.
Remove
It's
.bg
free.
is the best.
I don't have time to take notes or do other apps. I'm stuck in my old ways. I'm an old curmudgeon right now.
Oh, see, I just use
By the way,
Canva.com, and their background removal is awesome.
Every time I recommend something to David, the first thing he'll get, what do you use for such and such? And I'll tell him, he goes, is it free?
I don't care about the money. I care about the monthly renewals that after you do it, it's like, oh, I forgot to cancel it. We were getting charged for Disney Plus after we thought we canceled it 2 years ago.
Well,
Can't
dude,
get your money back.
I go to a site called AppSumo, and I buy things early on when they're startups, and then I own them forever.
Is it free?
No, I pay once and I don't have renewal.
Oi.
I'm telling you.
I love how after he's asking if it's free, he finishes with oi.
Oi, Big Mir, I tell you.
He's Jewish.
Only one person here could do that and say that and get away
It's
with
not
it.
the money. It's not the money. It's like you sign up for it. I want to get an okay, people. AI. What can I use for an AI generator? Image generator.
Midjourney.
I use Midjourney.
That's
Is
you're
it free?
trying to explain that to Viva. That's not going to happen.
It's not
guys.
free. It's it's a
Midjourney,
monthly
David,
subscription.
you can't handle
Process.
Midjourney because everything's got to be done through freaking Discord, and it's a nightmare.
Not doing
Someone's
it. I don't even know what Discord is. You get lost.
Oh, okay. Discord is a mess if you're at all boomerish.
Okay.
There's
does
another
anyone
one
have-
I can't use, but I can't remember what it is. It's free. Danny on Direct uses it, and I use it occasionally. It's just more anime kind based things, but can't remember what it is.
We're Joe adjacent. We're Jew adjacent.
Especially me.
Yeah, you're really adjacent.
Viva, toss me a line. I can
Oi.
connect you to a bunch of different options for AI generation.
Do I have your number,
Me too,
right?
please.
Yeah, I could use a link for that also. If you could throw in the private chat, I would love something for AI generation.
Yes.
I mean, it depends on what you want and which styles and.
I
whether
want
you
it to look like
subscriptions or
uncivil
locals.
laws.
He uses Midjourney, I believe.
I
His
know
looks
he
very
does, but
Midjourney.
if there's anything that's comparable to that,
He uses
It takes
Midjourney.
practice, though. It takes practice.
because I have a bunch
Midjourney
of
on
them.
5.1 doesn't really. It generates
pretty
good
good.
stuff on very simple prompts.
Okay, cool.
Mid journey.
Yeah,
I'm putting
yeah.
out. I copy. What did I do? I copyrighted my children's book called Louis the Lobster. So I'm going to do AI generated images, and I'm going to publish his book.
We
You're
have
gonna-
dueling children's books with Steve Gosney. Steve Gosney has a
Oh,
children's
no,
book we can
Jesus.
talk about.
My first death penalty.
I got this in the mail. I don't know whose this is. This is not a plug. This came in the mail. It's a children's book. Hold on. The person wrote something. It says April 26th to Viva Fry from Mali. So this is a book that I just got in fan mail today.
It looks like
nice.
it needs to be
I get-
banned.
I get books that look like children's books.
Well, I have a case
It's
for
a
the
woke
panel.
book.
Actually, I'm curious if everybody's heard about this case of the mother who her husband died. She wrote a children's book about grief. And
Yep,
it turned
I
out that
covered
she,
it.
Yes.
she murdered her husband with fentanyl.
Corey
covered it.
Richens from my homie girl, my homegirl from Camas, Utah.
I'll have
yeah.
to catch up with that video. I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Yeah, I covered that as well. It's the allegations are real
Yeah.
wild.
Well,
I
let's
think
She's
they've
been
added
trying to kill her
charges.
husband for years.
They might have added charges for intent to distribute, something like that. Drug.
Yeah,
charges
that's
for the-
because basically they're saying that she administered fentanyl to him. So
Yeah,
that's
she had
the-
60 fentanyl tablets.
Just-
hold on a
Didn't she
second.
have a party at the
Distribution.
house right after he died too? Like she's like, I'm not canceling this party, bro.
The next day, she closed on a $2 million home that he didn't want to buy.
Oh, this is well played. Midjourney's hand rendering gets 3 thumbs up. Well
Yeah,
played.
they have the proper number of fingers usually these days.
But
5.1 was a massive improvement.
Hold on a second. Get back to that case. I read about it briefly. So she murdered her husband, then wrote a kid's book on grief.
Yes, how to
Yes.
deal with the loss of a father.
And then how
I'm
did they find
wondering-
out ultimately?
there was a whole bunch of indications. And they have
She's been trying to kill him for
snitch.
years. Yeah.
They like the person who sold her the drugs seems to be testifying for the prosecution.
Yeah, the one who sold her the
So-
fentanyl. Who allegedly, she said, I want some of the Michael Jackson stuff.
Oh God.
Which would be propofol, but
Well, we've
Yeah.
got we have one that's even more on point if you want to get into that concept.
Well, can
And
we,
that's
before we
the
move on-
Nanley Profi. What? Well, hold on. How to Murder Your Husband. She literally wrote the book "How to Murder Your Husband" and was convicted, by the way, for murdering
I
her
heard
husband.
about her. I heard about her. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I
She-
feel like
before
that
you
is a book title you should avoid if you have just committed
Yeah.
a murder.
like
You're all on
next
the
to it,
nose.
O.J. Simpson, if I did
it.
Yeah, except hers was a prequel,
Yes.
right? Didn't
Also,
she write that before she murdered? Yeah.
Also, when you take your vows and they go, until death do we part, that's flags.
Soon.
It's not
Well,
a loophole.
apparently,
Wow.
I think
Can-
he
can
had
you-
known. Oh, sorry.
Before you run off, can you before you leave the Zachariah Anderson, I know that they have an appeal that they're pursuing and they have a fundraising page. Can you maybe put that in the chat in case somebody wants to contribute to Zachariah Anderson's appeal fund?
I have no idea what it is. So somebody.
It's a give, send, go.
Jeff will send it.
Yeah, Solomon, tweet that to me and then I'll paste it here in the chat and they can.
I'll find it.
All right. And all right, so I'm going to get Southern Law back into the case. Maybe Nate will actually say something.
Hello, Nate. Are you here, Nate? Are you alive?
They will not quit with the Helena Hutchins and the guns. Apparently, according to the new prosecution team funded by George Soros, the gun was modified. Now, what I find remarkable about this new tooling that they're discovering is somehow the FBI completely missed it while they were destroying the weapon. Does anybody have any thoughts? I'll start with Southern Law.
Okay, so my first thought is I don't care if it was modified because the way that gun works is you have to pull the hammer back before the trigger matters. Okay, it can't just go off because you pull the trigger. You have to pull the hammer back. So even if it were modified such that the sear was ground off of the hammer, so if you just pull the hammer back and let it go, it's going to fire if it's loaded. You still have to pull that out of your holster, point it at the person, and pull the hammer back in some sequence that results in it firing. So to me, if he had a right to rely on it being not modified, then he had a right to rely on it not also being loaded. And the corollary is he should have been following all the rules of gun safety. So to me, it doesn't change the equation that much. But also, I'm highly skeptical of that because anybody who would take one of those guns apart would be able to see whether the sear was ground down before they started testing it. I mean, come on. And you can find that out without taking it apart simply by cocking it, and you don't pull the trigger. And if the hammer doesn't go forward, then it's catching it. And that gun also catches that hammer if you're not holding the trigger back at more than one place on its way down. So it has some level of safety in it. So you'd have to be grinding this hammer down. And I know we talked about this a little bit before we came on, that it was some way damaged when the FBI was testing it. And that can happen if you're that kind of gun. If you're pulling the hammer back and just dropping it onto the sear catch that's below that, you do that enough times or it's compromised or whatever, that could break it. But I would find it hard to believe that the FBI, who should know more about guns than all of us at their forensic lab, wouldn't have noticed that the sear was ground off or whatever. But what it could do, and to me more likely, is an excuse to let him go and drop the charges. You brought these charges, now you're dropping them. Because how did you not know this? And where did this evidence come from that this thing had been ground down? The FBI knows more about it than any of the DAs setting out there, in my opinion.
Here's another problem because we've got
have you guys
Hannah
read the
Reid.
report? Like, because the
Yes.
report says how it broke.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they tried to get it to fire without pulling
Exactly.
the trigger repeatedly. And in fact, they found that the only way to do it was to pull the trigger, and they noted, like, even if you pull it up to almost the quarter cock position, it doesn't, that's not enough force to make it fire. They tried like hundreds of times to get this thing to fire. And in fact, the reason why it ends up failing is that they're testing it with a rubber mallet, because just to basically see if you smack this thing, can you get it to dislodge off these various, points where it hangs up. And they said, like, no, we tested it to the point of failure, which is how you test these guns. You basically keep testing them until you can actually, until it either goes off or you break it. And so
everybody knows that.
Hold on, Ian, I got to push back on that a little bit because according to the research I'm getting back from LAPD, et cetera, they don't do it to full destructive testing unless it's specifically authorized to take it all the way there. That was very unusual for them to keep going at it until it actually failed. And a lot of forensics people are saying that was odd.
I see a lot of, at least in Canada, I see a lot of situations where if they've got a gun that they're trying to determine, either it's like some homemade piece of garbage that they can't get to fire. Those will get tested to destruction. Basically going, can we? Or if it's a gun, like in this case, where it's the issue is, can we get it to fire?
But everybody knows that. Everybody knows that when you're quarter cocked, you can't fire.
Anyway, this is on point with it. Jason Bowles, Hannah Reid's lawyer, is criticizing it in the filing that he put up, and that is a question too. If this gun was supposedly so modified, then why is she still being charged?
Yep.
I mean, you've got two people here, and for some reason, one keeps slipping off the hook, and the other one, oh, sorry, the full force of the law is going to be against you. Seems odd.
Let's also talk about the fundamental reasons for safety rules. Why is it not okay to point a gun at your buddy? Well, it's because the safety rules exist on the assumption that eventually you're going to handle a gun that will have a mechanical failure or will have a user failure. This is why those rules exist. You don't point the gun at your buddy, not because, it's because of these issues, right? Because maybe something happens. And these are overlapping rules where theoretically you should need to break at least 2 rules of safety and potentially have a mechanical failure in order for somebody to die. But, so in my view, it's like, okay, sure, let's assume the gun was defective. Convict him. Because if we assume the gun was defective, that's why you don't point it at somebody, and why you do things like check with the armorer, to make sure that it's not loaded. All of these, like the cavalier approach to safety that was throughout this, including with Baldwin being like, no, I'm refusing to do these checks. It's like, no, this is not appropriate. And the line that gets bandied around of, oh, these are just actors, they're not supposed to know. No, my take is you either learn enough to not kill somebody or you don't handle a gun.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Ian, I know you talked about it and I talked about it. I think we may have actually talked about it together. If somebody would have, if any one of those people would have handed Alec the gun and said, yeah, it's clear, point this at your kid's head and pull the trigger, would he have done it? No.
Yep. It's ridiculous. And he could have determined that this was unloaded just by it's a 2-second check. Literally, like the guy handing them the gun opens up the cylinder and just rotates through it, because they were using film dummies that had no primers. And so it's real easy to check. Film dummies are super simple to determine the difference between those and real cartridges, because I was able to take a complete newbie, had never shot a gun before in her life, took her to the range, gave her a 2-minute explanation, and then blindfolded her, and she was able to determine live cartridges from dummies. So we did a test of, we loaded one of these revolvers with her picking, load this or don't load this, and we're able to get 6 clicks on a target, because it's that easy.
Well, I mean, even Baldwin, during the first interview, before he even knew she was dead, was like, I'm just an unfrozen caveman lawyer here. I don't understand anything about guns. I'm just an actor. And then by the end, he's like, okay, here's how you tell these 3 different types of rounds apart. Here's how you do this. And by the end, he was suddenly an expert. But then he was like, oh, but I don't understand again.
Well, people were citing to the policy. Apparently, like the policy for the actors is, once you're handed the firearm, don't check it. Policy doesn't supersede like actual criminal liability and your responsibility when you're handed a firearm. I don't give a crap if the policy says don't do that.
Well, that was, I mean, you saw that with Jensen Ackles giving his statements to the police, where he says, I don't care who hands me this weapon. I dry fire 6 times into the dirt before I do anything.
I don't like the dry firing into the dirt, but I like that he checks. I mean, it's not the best way for him to check it, but
well, according to Alec Baldwin, firing it, even if there's nothing in there, damages the pin, so you don't do that.
Oh, for sure.
Some firearms, that's true, not the one he was using. That's
wanted
more
to
of an
bring
issue with
something up.
22s.
In relation to this case, just because we were talking about, the negligence of it all, I don't want to interrupt if everybody's having a discussion about the gun aspect or, because the Rust case is really interesting. But I do happen to know about another criminal negligence case that occurred on the set of a film in 2014, and it's not very well known.
Yeah, Midnight Rider.
Midnight
case.
Rider.
It's very well known. The director and the
it is
director's
well known,
in
maybe.
prison. Well, no, I wrote an
Chandler.
8-hour documentary on it.
It's known to Hunley because he does the America's Untold Stories with Mark Robert, who is like the Hollywood insider.
No, my friend David Rollins did an entire documentary on it.
I'm giving credit to
Tell
Robert.
me about it, Chandler. I've never heard about it.
My mistake then. I guess I wasn't aware.
Seriously,
How
Eric.
dare you, Chandler?
Eric,
What the heck?
Chandler, now I need to know about this.
Eric,
'Cause I
that
don't
was
know.
so
I've never heard about it. Tell me,
misogynistic. I don't know what
Chandler.
that was.
come-
It's like
you
you
heard-
just, like,
I-
trampled
I
over
promise.
her.
Chandler.
Oh my God.
I guarantee you've heard of this one.
Oh,
He's just
good
blatantly
God.
It's like
thinking
she's like sitting here. This is your first time on here, Chandler,
What
right?
did you learn,
Oh
Chandler?
my
What did you
And
learn?
it's like he just
Hang on, let me
he
test
just
my
like
power. Let me test
trumped
my
all
power.
over
Here we
you
go.
there.
I
I'm
was
testing my
trying to
power.
give Nate a chance
this
to
is-
talk.
This is my power. Chandler, please tell us
Yes.
about Midnight Rider.
Well, now I'm embarrassed.
Don't be embarrassed. I was anyway.
I never
Well,
heard
okay,
of it.
here. First of all, I'm very happy that everybody seems to know about it because I
I don't know what it
learned about
is. I don't even know
in
what you're talking about. So
I
tell
learned
us
about
tell
it-
us about it.
I-
Tell us about it.
I learned about it in sort of an interesting way. I actually worked for an attorney who wrote a statement on behalf of the director in a plea to the judge. And so that was how I learned about the case. So essentially in 2014, they were filming Midnight Rider, this film. Oh God, I can't remember who starred in it, but Randall Miller directed it. And there was an accident
And
where
William Hurt.
they set up a scene on a train track in Georgia that happened to be an active train track. And one of I believe it was a key grip or somebody who was working on the film was hit by the train and killed.
Sarah Jones. Yeah.
Sarah Jones.
Ugh.
And Sarah Jones's family was obviously quite distraught. Randall Miller, I believe, was sentenced for negligence. I can't remember exactly what charges were. So clearly, I don't know as much about the case as you do, and I'm glad that everybody does know about it. But it's something that came up for me when I was thinking about it because I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in and around the film industry, and when I heard about the Rust case, I was struck by how rare that is. It does not happen.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many protections that are put in place to prevent accidents like that. Sets are very, very strict. There are a lot of people who are in control of those sorts of things, and especially when you're dealing with weapons, it just doesn't happen, which is why it was so shocking. And I feel like there are so few cases to compare. But in any case,
I mean,
Anyway,
I
I'm not saying, and I apologize. Hold on. I've got to
You're
clear
not
the air
gonna
because I wasn't trying to say everybody knew about it. I do know about it. It's pretty popular because it was brought up, especially at the time of Rust.
I'm
Because
glad
it's a
people know about
horrible. Okay, that's cool, and a lot of people here didn't. So you're right. Apparently, it's less well known. It's a very stark case because it involves a train literally running somebody over on a film
How
set,
does
which
that
is
happen?
not.
Twilight movie.
They said it was a light
Chandler.
train. They said it was
Twilight
a styrofoam
movie.
train.
Chandler, I think you have over 1,000 subscribers now.
Yes,
Oh,
Chandler
wow.
does.
That's incredible.
Congratulations.
That's a massive milestone because that now frees you up to start getting monetized.
Now
then.
post your
The
second
money.
video.
Now you can start bringing in the
It's coming.
ching.
Well,
Well,
Anyway,
on
the
Sunday.
director was sentenced and served a good bit of time. I don't remember how long it was, but he served years
Yes, he did.
for this. Is very rare because there was also the Twilight Zone death,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
he skated. It was a close call, but they skated on the sentencing there, and I forgot the director's name on that. I keep
And then there
loving
was
talking
Brandon
about
Lee.
this
There
stuff
was
right.
They were both, yeah.
Brandon Lee was a pure
That was
accident.
a weird thing,
That was
yeah.
so weird because
Yeah.
that one actually, I don't think anybody can be legitimately charged. It was a case where the primer wasn't properly fired in the bullet, so therefore the
Yeah, you
primer was there,
literally
but
had
there
to
was a
have
drill
two
in the
things go
side.
wrong. Yeah.
Right, and
they
it
had
popped into the barrel.
The
bullet was
projectile
in
wiggled loose basically
into
because
the
it wasn't
barrel
properly
when they
seated.
fired it. Then they put a blank in. Blank hit the projectile and then went into him. It's such a freakish thing. And then John Eric Hexum
Yeah.
put fired a blank into his head. Well, I mean,
Airwolf.
that wasn't.
Yeah.
You know
That one
can
was
kill you.
just like That's just
That
incompetence,
was just
but
dumb. Yeah.
it was a self-solving problem.
Yeah, kind of. Anyway, no, I didn't mean to step on that. It's just Nate has never said anything the entire stream, and I was trying to cue him up for Daniel Penny.
I'd love to hear from Nate.
Nate.
He's
Hello.
Hey.
I want to tell all you feminists in here. So what? Yes, I am the only feminist in the room. Obviously
Wow.
not, right? You guys
Amazing.
watch my. I know you guys watch my stuff, so you know I'm lying. But this Daniel Penny stuff is insane. So what I'm going to do, because I have the power to do it, I'm going to play you guys some of the things that I've been researching. So now I want you to hear this. Now I gotta let you guys know this is a race grifting mother effer. So he's going to describe the Daniel Penny case, but I want you to hear how the left wing is describing what happened on that subway train. Now I don't have to go over the facts of the Daniel Penny case. We all know the subway choke victim, right?
Yep.
I'm assuming.
Well,
all right. So
not going to presume.
Now check out this description of the events, because it's insane how the mainstream media is just essentially just you know what? Just watch the clip. Check this out. The clip is not coming up, Eric. There it is. All right, listen to this, guys.
Look at the mustache on this guy.
Look at that hairline.
I want you to look at
This
that.
guy looks realistic than some of the stuff that I generate with Midjourney.
This guy's a prime idiot.
Try to stop.
Prime idiot.
I want you to remember. Number one, multiple individuals did try to stop Mr. Neely from dying. Multiple witnesses have come forward and said Mr. Neely was not threatening nor putting anyone in danger.
False.
As a matter of fact, it was the killer who was agitated and became the aggressor.
Oh yeah, I believe.
Multiple individuals also attempted to stop and to check
Can we just pause for a second?
Mr. Neely.
Can we just pause for a second? Just look at this picture. Just look at this picture and ask yourself for a second, in what scenario in New York City is a white man grabbing a black man around the throat aggressively and being assisted in holding that person down by two other people, one of them being black, where the white person is the instigator and the violent one? Just look at that.
I don't know.
Picture.
I saw those pictures of you and Nate hanging out earlier in the day.
I was going to say, Joe, that sentence started off very risky, but I understand where it went. Is that you're on a metro, and there's going to be a racially motivated hate crime, and people are not going to be beating the ever-loving urine out of the racist man attacking.
It happens, David. In Chicago at 2:00 in the morning, there was an attack on a poor gentleman at 17 below 0 degrees. So these things happen.
I think one of the most important things about this story is that there are three people attacking Mr. Penny. So that's essentially, in New York, we would charge that as gang assault, right? You have multiple people attacking one person, but the other two people happen to be people of color. So the only person charged in this essentially gang assault is the white person, because they're saying that because of the chokehold. But the thing is that in every other instance, you would charge the whole group of people because it's a gang assault. So now that's one of the issues here. Why are you not charging the group of people? Because all three of those guys are holding the person down, and all three of those guys essentially are aiding and abetting in this particular crime.
Because he's a military trained killer.
That's it. Yeah. It's just outrageous bullshit. But Nate, that was from a clip from the Young Turks.
Yes, that's the Young Turks. But you know what? I have a better one. Here is
better. The Young Turks has gotten worse. I didn't think it could get worse than what it was. That's atrocious. Oh,
this is a better clip. This is such.
Jackson.
Listen to the way that she describes the events. Listen to this.
This is Janet Jackson from the Nasty Boys.
Take his medication and stay clean for 15 months. Unfortunately, he left the place after 13 days. So this is a troubled person who needed help. As prosecutors, when someone is a danger to society, you don't put them in a mental health facility. You put them in prison. The other thing I think is important to say, let's put this in context. Yes, he was on the train. I ride the train. I've been riding the train in New York City since I was 12 years old. This is what he was doing.
I don't believe
he was shouting that he was hungry, that he was thirsty, and he had little to live for.
Oh, that's
hungry,
one version.
thirsty,
Solve
and
that
little
problem.
to live for.
And that totally.
Where was the humanity of anyone that
Humanity.
was on that
Oh,
train?
the huge
I would have
humanity.
given
Oh
him
my
money.
goodness.
That's one
I would have
version of
tried
what
to
was
give him
said.
food. I would have tried to help.
She's
This
a hero,
is
this
someone
woman.
in need, in desperate need. And I am
Hands up,
ashamed
don't shoot.
that someone that was part of our armed forces
I'm ashamed.
decided to become a vigilante and kill him.
Vigilante.
And that
Hashtag Bernie gets, baby.
Oh my goodness. It's so
Yes.
atrocious. First of all, I would like to see evidence that she has ridden the train in the last 5 years. I don't think she does.
Before we move on from that, can someone clarify? Because someone clarify exactly what he was saying on the train, because it wasn't what Sonny
He
Hoskins
said, "I don't care if I go to jail." I'll pull up the
Yeah,
quote.
I've been to jail. I don't care if I go to jail. Someone's going to give me some money. Someone's going to give me money for food. Someone's going to feed me. I will go to jail. I will hurt people. Stuff like that.
He
It's
said,
just-
I don't here witness. Okay, this is from, I hate Fox News, but whatever. He's a hero, say the witnesses. It was self-defense, say other people. I'm sitting on the train and all of a sudden I hear someone spewing this rhetoric. He said, I don't care if I have to kill an F. I will. I'll go to jail. I'll take a bullet. Recalled a woman who was in her 60s. Clearly not the woman on The View. She's in her 50s. And that's it. I don't care if I have to kill an F. Why in the world would you take a bullet? Why? This is not what he said. Okay, it doesn't matter. That's it. So I guess that's a variation of what he said.
Daniel Petty has been charged with second-degree manslaughter and the death. Well, here I'll actually play what the initial report said. He actually said. Sorry, let me pull. I'll pull it.
Oh, I caught your video. I loved it.
So
You
here's
should've
what the
done a
initial
Subway
report.
and bought him a sandwich.
But the wild part about it is that I don't play any of the video. The left, people from the left, whoever, they mass flagged the video, and my YouTube partner actually called me and was like, "Why is this video so bad?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know why they're mass flagging it." And he even said, he was like, "This video is nothing." And YouTube, even after I appealed it, YouTube said, "No, we're going to keep it the way it is because so many people are offended by the video." And I don't have any part. I don't have stills in the video. I don't have anything. So they don't want to see any controversy to this. But here is what this guy actually, well, here's what was reported initially before it became a race issue, obviously.
Passenger in a headlock, and that passenger later died. Authorities say 30-year-old was acting erratically and threatening other passengers yesterday on an F train at the Broadway Lafayette station when the 24-year-old stepped in to try to subdue the man. The man who died has 44 prior arrests in the subway system, including violent crimes. Police questioned the 24-year-old but released him, and no charges have been filed.
Now the person,
heroism or vigilantism. The video
eyewitness.
shows 3 strap hangers subduing the 30-year-old man after witness Juan Alberto Vasquez says he got on the northbound F train and began acting aggressively, threatening riders. Law enforcement sources with knowledge of the case confirm his account, saying according to a witness, the man began shouting, quote, "I want food. I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm ready to go back to jail, and I'll hurt anyone on this train."
The man got on the subway car and began to say a somewhat aggressive speech, saying that he was hungry, he was thirsty, and he didn't care about anything. He didn't care about going to jail, that he didn't care that he gets a big life sentence, and it doesn't matter if he died.
Vasquez says he was scared and believes others on the train were too. That's when he says a 24-year-old rider came up behind the man and put him in a chokehold, holding him there on the ground. 2 other men standing over them also helped subdue.
But now that is a totally different story than what we just heard from now the witnesses, the news reports. It's a totally different story. So they're trying to make this guy out to say he was just sitting there saying, "I want food and I'm thirsty," and somebody just choked him to death. When the reality is he was throwing things at people. He was saying people he was going to go to jail for the rest of his life. He was threatening people. "I'm going to hurt anyone on this train." But it's so insane because this is Rittenhouse all over again. This is Rittenhouse all over again. And I bet you this guy's going to turn into.
Yeah.
And I'm going to assume this is going to turn into this kid. How much do you want to bet he's going to turn into a white supremacist overnight? They're going to find something he said or he's given an okay signal, and he's going to be a white supremacist secretly in New York, and he needs to go to jail for the rest of his life. This is
They'll find a
insane.
package of Skittles on the victim somewhere.
No, his mustache is already a dead giveaway. So that's just slightly wider than the bad one.
And that strangely curly hair. That's a sign of a criminal.
But going back to that earlier, talking about the
Just
prairie
saying.
fire.
Well, Matthew McConaughey could play him in the movie coming up.
That's true.
Oh no.
The Marxist, intersectionality dynamic of oppressed oppressor. All that matters is the race, because that's how we divide people now. It's just race and sex, instead of looks to me like the races were working together to subdue a crazy person on the subway in defense of the weak. What the prosecutor is basically doing is the predators on the subway will seek out the weak, and the protector, the sheepdogs, the strong men and the strong people will refuse to help because they are basically criminalizing defense of others.
Oh, there's Gosney being logical and rational again.
New York jury. By the way, Ghazi, I'm going to have to correct you. I think that race is getting pushed back a little bit here, as well as women. The trans now is at the forefront, and they are the winners with the gold medal in the Oppression Olympics.
Yes, well, we have to have a Muslim, a person of color who is transsexual. And then they what is it? I think Daily Wire was Ben Shapiro says we need to pick that person and then they can rule us all because they'll be at the top of the intersectionality pyramid.
That's me. That's how I identify. I didn't ask to be born this color.
Add in a disability, that sort of thing.
Yes.
When the movie of this is made, I just want Viva to shave the beard and he can be Perry in the movie.
Perry is much taller. He's much taller and much leaner than me, but
Tom Cruise played Jack Reacher too, so come on.
That's true.
You can do it.
Eric, were you segueing into my interview yesterday with Blair White?
Sure.
It was a
why not?
Absolutely. I love Blair. I can't wait to watch that.
Way to make the stream all about you, Viva.
I say it's an amazing thing. I interviewed Blair White yesterday, and I discovered Blair on Twitter before I knew that Blair was, and she is using the word transsexual now. And I had a discussion with someone which asked me why do you use she with Blair but he with Dylan Mulvaney? And it's a very interesting thing. And I think my ultimate realization is I first thought Blair was a woman before I found out.
You were confused. She passes.
Well, it's it's not a question of the passing, actually. It's a question of your perception meeting reality. And so the discussion we had yesterday is when I see Pat, Pat and Roger, character from Saturday Night Live, the reason why you want to know if Pat is a male or a female is on the one hand, reconcile reality in your mind, and also just not make a mistake with the individual. And so when your reality is established that I had no reason to think about it, it's different than dude's got a 4 o'clock shadow and refuses to do anything other than put on lipstick and a dress and then changes from one year to the next. But it was an amazing discussion because Blair is taking flack from the trans community for saying that none of this should be pushed on kids whatsoever. And it's she recognizes that he, she, whatever, she doesn't care if you call her he or she, recognizes it's a mental condition, gender dysphoria, and that the procedure is not for everybody and certainly not ever for kids, period, full stop. It was amazing. It was an interesting discussion.
Have you guys ever seen that documentary from Australia where they have the trans kid that's 6 years old and the parents transition the kid from male to female? It's at 6 years old, there's no way that kid knows. It's literally, if you go to YouTube and sites, the youngest transgendered kid is the first thing that pops up. It's at 6 years old. Is that really does that child know what gender they are? It absolutely makes no sense. But if you say
doesn't even know what sex is.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Bill Maher said, when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be a pirate, but it's a thing they didn't take my eye out and give me a peg leg surgery.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and the thing, as a straight man who holds an honorary lesbian card, I will say I don't want kids to be sexualized at any. I don't want them to be heterosexually sexualized at an 8-year-old age. I mean, let kids be children. Let's protect their innocence. Let's let them grow normally. Why are we pushing sex on little kids? I don't care if it's straight, transsexual, homosexual, whatever. It's inappropriate at that age. Kids are innocent. They don't understand sex. There'll be time enough for that when they get old enough to interested in it.
The reason Blair White. I'm sorry. You go. Oh, okay, fine. I'll go. What?
I just said, why are we taking to drag shows? That's all.
Yeah. No. What Viva was saying, as far as Blair White not caring about whether you call Blair he or she, that's because the reason people care about it the reason it's a big deal is because internally, on some level, they know they are not what they purport to be. If you know that, if I don't need someone to recognize that I'm Jewish to be Jewish, I don't need someone to recognize that I'm a lawyer to be a lawyer. If you know what you are, in that case, you don't care about validation from anybody. But the reason why I think it's pretty clear to me that anyone who's sitting there all wrapped up in their pronouns is the very person who should not be called by that pronoun that they choose to identify by, because they clearly know in their heart of hearts that that's not what they are. Because if you are something, you never need anyone else to label you that way.
I'll take it.
It's ma'am, Joe.
I'll take it one step further, and Blair actually made the point in terms of the types of people who claim to be trans. Those that are attracted to the heterosexuals of the sex from which they want to deviate, and the others which are not, and then basically do it ostensibly to dominate the opposite sex. And I'm convinced that the whole game being played here, not to go to Gosney's Marxist destruction of society, it's ideological dominance. And it's not a question of acknowledging reality or even their perceived reality. It's a question of compelling subservience and exerting dominance ideologically and over the most fundamental thing, what comes out of your mouth. But anyhow, that's it. So with Blair, insofar as she, he, whatever, doesn't demand it, it almost becomes more natural. That, and if my reflex would have been he or she just on appearance, and I wouldn't even ask the question, what are you? That's where I'm going to go with. And when it comes to Pat, the reason why you do it, or you ask, or you don't want to make a mistake, is you don't want to embarrass them if it's insulting. And also, you need to reconcile reality in your mind. Are you a male or a female? But it was an interesting discussion, and we'll see who learns.
I personally think it's Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Right.
It's weird. I went back by my law school, right? But they ask everybody what's your preferred pronouns. So what they did, they had a whole bunch of people from the hood come in because they were doing like this whole thing. So all the people from the hood, so they're asking them what's your preferred pronouns. Like 90% of the people, they happen to be Black and Hispanic. They got offended when they were asking, like, what the hell do you mean? I don't look like a dude, yes, I'm a man. And so then they were like, all right, so we're gonna label you as cisgender. They're like, we're not cisgender, we are man gender. What it is.
You're getting pushed down the intersectionality pyramid. That's what you're experiencing right there. That you don't matter anymore because we have somebody that can push you down the pyramid.
But it's interesting because when you do go to, let's say, these communities, the Black community, the Latino, like Latinx, was like a lot of these woke policies, they hate them to death. But they vote Democrat because it's the whole racism scare, right? And that's all essentially the other side really has. But I think that's starting to unravel. Like even with this Daniel Penny thing, there were Black people on that train, and when you see the reports, one of the Black women said he's a hero. He stopped that maniac, but you don't hear that on the mainstream media. And I think that's the issue now. It's less about the issue and more about control. If I can control what you say, how you say it, and how you think, that's more powerful to me than anything else. And I think that's what we're really fighting against, that type of control. From COVID to pronouns. We want to say what we want to say, and we want to have the freedom to do it.
Yeah, I actually think he's probably going to be acquitted. I know that sounds crazy in New York because so much is built into the jurisdiction, but I'm expecting that there's going to be a lineup of people for the defense coming in there saying that his action was heroic, and does that mean that I think it's a terrible thing that that's not a terrible thing that he's being charged? Of course, it's a terrible thing. It's obviously,
but number one, the process is the punishment, and number two, you also get a problem of how exactly are you going to get these bystanders to testify on his behalf? That isn't that hearsay. What matters is his intent and his view of the situation. Now,
I think you can get
ethical and moral.
They're witnesses to the action.
Yeah,
well, that's an evidentiary ruling that a trial judge could just say, "Yep, now we're not letting them testify."
30 witnesses on the train that saw
that would be reversible error.
Yeah.
That would be reversible.
We're gonna they'll bring Schroeder in for this one.
Exactly.
Yeah. What I'm worried about is, first of all, can we get? Is there any way to avoid a jury trial? Because I think there's going to be a trial by media, and there's going to be a long period of time where he's going to be represented in the media in this particular way. You have New York; it's very liberal, obviously. So the people that are going to get on that jury, they're going to want to get on that jury because they have a particular view, and they're not going to necessarily admit to it in voir dire.
That's fair.
Trial by judge in New York is worse.
Oh no, see,
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing. Like, because that's what I want to ask, like, you people that actually really do
New York.
trial court cases. I mean, it was always like never let the judge decide your case. Always go for the jury. But at this point, I mean, my personal inclination would be like, I don't trust 12 people. I want someone to apply the law.
You don't
Well,
need to
generally
trust
with-
12. You need to trust one.
Yeah, generally with cops,
Okay, fair enough.
cops for like use of force stuff, they'd rather judges because it's more of a technical legal thing, right? If it's a self-defense, then the judge would be more likely than a jury who will go on emotions. But then if you have an emotional case, then obviously you'd lean more to it. So I think in this particular case, I really think it's either way, because I think technically on the law, he has a very good argument, right? If 30 witnesses, all this other stuff. But then I think on the emotional piece, you don't need all 12. You just need one of those jurors to say, hey, this was self-defense or this was reasonable.
Now,
And
I
that's
will
what you
give
get.
I will give one caveat, and to follow up on what you just said, Nate, I'll give one caveat as far as where I said earlier that I think that he's going to get acquitted, and that is if one of two things happens that could completely skunk everything. One is if there's one witness on there who claims that they were screaming at him to stop, that he was in peril, that could be lethal to Penny. The other thing is if there's huge public outrage, and this is more likely thing I think to happen, if there are all these protests and rallies going on there, that could intimidate a jury into just basically saying, you know what, I don't give a damn how many witnesses come in here and say he was heroic. I'm not having my family being subjected to this mob out there, and that could force, because I felt the same thing with Derek with
Chauvin, with Derek Chauvin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With Derek Chauvin. If you want to tell me, and I'll tell you this much, I was saying if I was sitting on that jury, I could understand that since he was ignoring his fellow police officers who were saying, let's check on him, and he waited another 3 minutes before he checked on him. In a life and death situation, someone's having trouble breathing, I can understand saying, if you wait 3 minutes longer than when your fellow cops are telling you to check on him before you even bother looking, to me, I can understand someone saying that that's a low level homicide. But when you're calling this when you're signing up for felony murder, that I think was the public pressure which convinced them to say, we're not acquitting this dude on anything because we don't want to face it.
Fellow lawyers,
Guys,
I don't want to
before
start the exodus.
I got to jump. I got to call.
I just realized my wife is in here and I got to go do parenting stuff. So
I got to go do real work. But
I'm not plugging things. I'm just saying tonight we're releasing our first Content Plus documentary on our locals community. It's going to be free for all the annual subscribers, and it's The Day in Chattanooga with Robert Barnes. I know the history of Chattanooga like no one else on earth. So 7 o'clock is going to be the premiere on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Peeps.
That's a perfect segue, Viva, because then you can jump from that at 7 o'clock over to my channel at 8 o'clock for Friday Night Frenzy.
That's it. I can do that. Okay, and I'll let everybody know. People, it was great meeting you, Chandler.
Great to meet you too. Thanks
Remington.
you asked wonderful questions. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. All right, see you guys later. Peace out.
See you.
Bye.
All right, and then I've got about Sue, guys. Good to see you guys. 8 p.m. tonight, Friday Night Frenzy, covering Warhol, new Murdoch filings, and then FTX, a clawback action for $245 million.
We'll be watching.
Awesome. And I saw you put up a new Trials of the Century episode on Depth.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have to check that out. I'm looking forward to that.
That's back again. Yep. See you guys.
Another
Thank
one
you.
more
Happy
out.
Friday, everyone.
Great seeing you, Rob. Bye.
Bye.
And then there were 8.
And there was 8.
I'm dealing with the trend. You know that stupid trans video. Now the trans community has
Which
been.
one?
Well, I got one about the trans powerlifter. That video is also getting reported like crazy. I'm like,
You've got to
what's
still be
going
making
on?
bank off that video, though.
Yeah, but it's getting it's crazy because I think my CPMs, for those of you who don't know how YouTube works, when you make a video, they pay you like per 1,000 views. Mine has gone from like 5 to like 89 cents because they just keep reporting my channel. It's crazy, but I'm still making the videos though. F the haters.
You were down at $5. I think I'm at somewhere between 6 and 7. I thought that was low.
Yeah, I'm down to like almost like it's like 89 cents to $1.15. But that's just because they keep reporting that video just gets reported like insanely. So and even though YouTube still hasn't monetized, it's still great. But
wow, that's terrible.
I don't know how any of this stuff works. This is all like part-time for me, but I will say that you need to go and subscribe because I'm not in the monetary zone, I guess. I'm mainly a Rumble guy. My Rumble is my lead. Because I talk about stuff that will probably get me banned at some point. So why build a house on a foundation of sand? But I do when I do stream, I do it on both. So please go over and subscribe to my YouTube so that whatever's going on is somehow monetized. However this world works that you guys are doing, I don't know.
And buy his books.
Buy my books. Yeah, that's the main thing.
What, Steve? Do you have books?
I know
he had books.
I know, it's surprising. I've written an article on that. My newest
Allegedly.
one, the audio book for Prepare is available, and Death Penalty Debates is available for pre-order.
All right.
All right. Well, you know what? Let me just roll everybody out. And Nate, what do you have coming up?
I don't have actually anything coming up. I just got random videos I'll be throwing out there. Hopefully you guys will like what I throw. I'll be doing the subway stuff because I'm in the middle of a move, obviously. So I got a lot, I'll just be putting out stuff. So Nate the Lawyer, put in a search engine and my ugly mug should show up.
All right. Steve from Southern Law, the quiet gentleman on the panel.
Yeah, normal stuff, but probably tomorrow I'll have the video out on the Tiger Woods case since I looked at that before I came in on this stream and what the federal laws are for that and how it applies and all the social drama.
Mr. Ian Runkle.
So right now, I guess the video that's coming out later tonight is here in Canada. There's been a big push for bail reform. People have been asking for bail to be clamped down on. And the government has put forward a bill that they say is a bail reform bill. And I go through it to basically point out that it is complete horseshit and is essentially entirely a way to deceive the public. Several of the provisions that they're touting as a big deal do literally nothing. So that video will be going live later today. And other than that, there's going to be a lot of content talking about our stupid gun laws that they're putting through here. Because it's going to be insane. The number of morally innocent people this is going to throw in jail is just, it's unbelievable that our government is doing this. But so that'll be what's going on.
All right. I'm going to keep going clockwise here. So let me see. And stream Steve. Outside of writing books, you're at 709 subscribers. So folks, consider
come on over
following.
there. Follow, yeah, I mainly stream on Rumble. Everything that I do is accessible through stevegossi.com. I'm on my third book. I have 2 children's books. I just productive, and then Law Cards, of course, is getlawcards.com. And then I don't know. That's about it. Whatever. Go to stevegossi.com for all your needs.
All right, and now into the thousandaire. We have Chandler Remington. What do you have coming up? And congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad you guys definitely helped me get to 1,000, and I appreciate that. I'm so happy to be here, first of all. So thank you for having me. I have a video coming out on Sarah Boone on Sunday. I'm going to be doing a case overview. On Monday, I'm going to have Solomon Anderson on my channel, and we are going to be discussing the Duluth model and how it led, I believe, to Zach's conviction. And then coming up after that, I'm going to be getting into more of the Sarah Boone case, and we're going to be doing a live stream. Also, David Helm will be joining me on Monday, and I'm going to be live streaming Sarah Boone's arrest video, as well as her interview. I might do a drinking stream for that one because I made a drinking game to go up with her interview, and we might have a lot of fun. So if anybody wants to do that, you're welcome.
When is that?
TBD for the Sarah Boone stuff. I have to come up with a date, but I hope next week.
Okay.
That Duluth standard, that's the one that's been debunked. Isn't that like the horrible standard where it's only men are always the bad ones, right? Am I missing? Yeah, that's the one that's bad. Oh my God.
Literally cited in Parliament with regards to the gun control stuff right now in Canada. They've been falling over themselves.
I don't even know what the Duluth standard is. What is that?
They've been falling over themselves to say, oh, no, we just mean violence by men against women because the other never happens.
So the Duluth model, we discussed this early, and if I may, I can go over it if you're interested.
Sure.
Okay. The Duluth model was developed in 1986. It was developed by a feminist named Ellen Pence, and she was not even a therapist, but she and a group of feminists basically came up with this concept that we needed to start treating domestic violence as a product of the patriarchy, that men are inherently going to want to subjugate women, that men are always aggressors, women are always victims. And unfortunately, and I don't know how exactly it has done this, I still have to figure this out, it has penetrated every area of law enforcement, domestic violence training for law enforcement in terms of how they respond to calls. It has infiltrated the family court system, and it's in Australia, it is in Sweden, it's in a lot of countries, and it is not effective. So basically they have this standard where they show a wheel sort of how domestic violence happens, and they have this strategy where they approach it by blaming men and putting them in this position where, you know, they're going to have to, you know, repent for their patriarchal whatever. And the tragedy is that, like, for example, in the Sarah Boone case, we had a man who, this was a relationship where there were multiple police calls. This woman weaponized the police against her partner. She put him in a suitcase and he suffocated. And the thing is that she had previously strangled him and been convicted, or not convicted, but she had been charged with battery strangulation. Statistics show that 1 in 10 people who are strangled by their partner will later be killed by them. And this was ignored. And unfortunately, she would call the police on him, get him charged with domestic battery. But the problem was she was the instigator. She eventually killed him. And so we have this issue with the Duluth model where we have police responding to these incidents. They couldn't figure out who was the aggressor. And the problem is that police are trained to see that women are the aggressors.
Men are the aggressors. The men are the aggressors.
Or sorry, that men are the aggressors, and that women are always victims. Thank you for correcting me. And so the problem is that it's incredibly dangerous, and I believe that it has led literally to men dying in domestic violence situations like George Torres. So I'm going to be discussing that in my videos, and I'm going to be exploring the Duluth model and how harmful it is. People don't really know about it.
I gotta cue that up.
We're strangling men, hallelujah, strangling men.
When I was in law enforcement, they literally had to kind of deprogram us from that. Like when you go to a DV situation, it was just natural to always say the guy. But now they make you look for look to see who's injured, that type of thing, because that's what they were finding, that even if the guy was that beat the hell up, they were still taking the guy and arresting the guy. So, you know, but again, there's also like personal, because usually as guys, you think if somebody's calling for domestic violence, it's the guy who's the problem. But in a lot of these situations, it wasn't. So even in New York, they had to kind of scroll that back, and they're still struggling with that now. Obviously, you see with Amber Heard, how people still can't reconcile the fact that she was the abuser in the relationship.
That's what started me on this train.
It was also a situation where it was endangering officers, because they'd arrive at a scene and assume that the woman was a safe person. And there were some instances of officers like getting stabbed because they didn't realize that the woman was actually dangerous. So that's another reason why they had to revisit that in police training, to be like, you got to know, you know, either party might be crazy or dangerous, and you can't just assume based on gender.
Well, you can't, definitely, because the problem is that statistically, we're taught, you know, I learned this in a class on, you know, gender studies in college. I was taught basically it's the patriarchy's fault. You know, I was taught the Duluth model. I believed it. I bought into it. And I realized that statistically, women are actually slightly more violent than men are in domestic violence situations. But women know how to weaponize the police against their partners, because they know when they call the police, if they say he hit me first, that they will get away with it. And that's exactly what Sarah Boone did. And she ended up murdering her partner. And so this is a very big problem, and we need to talk about it, and we need to change things systemically.
Hey, can I congratulate Valhalla Awaits for gaining a wrench? Eric?
Oh, that's your. See, you went out of turn. I was going to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know anybody was paying attention.
I love
I was
Valhalla.
paying attention.
He's an awesome mod.
Do you guys?
I hope. I don't know. I don't know him, so it's like okay.
So we all know Valhalla, don't we? The bottom rung, at least here.
Yeah.
I hope I haven't talked for too long. I wanted to give a thorough explanation because Joe wasn't here earlier.
No, that was
great. That was great. That was fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Whenever you see the panel shut up, that means you did a good job.
It's something that's very important to me. It's something that I care about. It's how I built my platform on.
All right.
You
did your time. You did.
Okay. You go. I'll do this all on my own. You guys go. Thank you so much.
All right, Jeff.
No,
Getting too
What
big.
do you
for
have
Hi, I'm
coming
Legal
up?
Vices. If you don't know who I am, I'm Legal Vices right there. Go to my channel, subscribe to me. We're at just over 36,200 subscribers. Woohoo. I've been doing this for about a year now. What's coming up? What time is it here? It's 3 a.m. here. So 5 hours from now, I'll be on Danny on Direct's birthday stream. If anything else happens over the weekend, I'll be on whoever stream it's happening on. Monday, I always do Maritime Monday every Monday, where we talk about maritime disasters. I don't know what we're going to be talking about this Monday, but it'll be something cool. Perhaps cannibalism will be involved. Tuesday, I'm going to have Lauren De Laguna on. She's an amazing person. She's funny as hell. You need to be there for that. Wednesday, every Thursday, I do a flashback to O.J. Simpson trial. We've been doing that for about 6 months now. We'll be doing it indefinitely, but we're going to be doing it on Wednesday this week, and then Thursday will be Danny on Direct. Friday I'll have Steph the alternate guest hosting. As a guest. Then next Monday, the following Monday will be another Maritime Monday, and then Law and Lumber Rob will be on 30th to wrap up the month. That's me.
All right. Now, we always like to wrap things up with Joe, who will not only do his plugs, but try to give us a word of wisdom or guidance, because
that's good.
He is a
that's
smart
good,
father.
Because that's good, because I actually have like the perfect analogy for what we were talking about earlier that I just came up with and I want to share with you all. So I am good Logic, and I'm supposed to be having Nick on Monday and Zachariah on Tuesday, although if he's going to be on Chandler, I don't even know what we're going to be left to talk about, because she's going to do such a phenomenal job with David Helm, which, if you don't know him, I had him on my show earlier this week.
MLS Law.
Dude is awesome. And it's Michigan Law Show. He's great. And yeah, basically I stream, and I'm planning on starting producing videos, which I haven't done in over a year. So yeah, you definitely want to check that out, because when I'm doing video work, it's something to behold. It's really something to behold. Anyway, but that's all at Good Logic, and goodlogic.locals.com is the best place to find me. Seriously, goodlogic.locals.com. But getting back to that analogy that I just came up with, and just want to close this out for you guys here. It's an amazing thing I thought of that